As tensions rise up north, we're heading to the Israel-Lebanon border with our good friend, Elliot Chodoff. Elliot is a top military and strategic analyst. He's also a veteran of the Israel Defense Forces and still serves today as a major in the IDF reserves. He described why the next Middle East war may just be sparked by Hezbollah. Here's part one of our interview. Well, Elliot, where we are standing right now looks very peaceful, tranquil even.
Absolutely.
But just over the horizon lives and breathes the world's most dangerous terrorist organization. Not even an organization, a terrorist army. Where are we right now?
Okay, we're on the lower slopes of the Golan, facing west. We have the Hula Valley below us, and if I can correct you, not over the horizon, but before the horizon is Hezbollah land.
Lebanon.
Lebanon.
Southern Lebanon, to be precise.
Correct. From here, we're seeing part of South Lebanon, but even into a little bit further. And again, I think makes your point of how close everything is, how tight everything is here. Beyond the ridge, across from us, the ridge itself is Israeli, but just over the ridge again, Lebanon, all the way to the Mediterranean coast.
Yeah. Folks, if you live in Texas, imagine a powerful terrorist organization right over the border in Mexico. Or if you live in Minnesota, a powerful terror organization staring you down across the border from Canada. This is the equivalent.
Except in Texas, you could be much, much, much further away than we are here.
True.
From the Mexican border than we are. Then our furthest point is from the Lebanese border.
Yeah.
It's a whole different sense of scale.
That's true.
I think you described them very well, a terrorist army. Hezbollah, this idea of terrorist organizations is somewhat passé. Yeah. Not because they're not terrorists, but it doesn't fully depict ISIS at its strength, the Taliban, Hamas in Gaza, and certainly Hezbollah here, and there are other examples around the world, of groups that have gone from, I'll call it classical terrorism, of blowing up buses, for example, to military terrorism. And Hezbollah, again, possibly the best example, organized in platoons and companies and battalions.
Like an army.
An army.
Elliot, with what you're describing, it sounds like Hezbollah is better equipped than most militaries, most armies in the Middle East.
In many ways it is. In terms of rocket capability, it's on a par with any country in NATO other than the United States of America.
What does that mean? What do those numbers, estimated numbers, look like in terms of?
The official estimate is about 100,000 rockets. My estimate is closer to 250,000 rockets. And the truth is, it doesn't matter all that much. It's probably somewhere in between.
250,000 rockets.
Right.
Here in Lebanon.
South Lebanon.
Pointed at every inch of Israel, which is the size of the state of New Jersey.
Correct. They can reach every municipality in Israel except for a lot at the extreme southern tip of the country. Everybody else is in range. They have range, they have capabilities of accuracy that they never had before, load capability in terms of explosives, far beyond anything they've ever had before.
When you say far beyond anything they had before, there was a major conflict here just in 2006, 12 years ago.
Right. They started that one with 20,000 rockets. The Air Force took out a good number of them early on, but we were hit with 4,000 over a 5-week period.
In Kiryat Shimona?
In Kiryat Shimona, this area was rocketed constantly.
Right where we're standing.
But as far south as Haifa. They aimed for even further south, we intercepted some, but essentially 4,000 over 5 weeks. Today their plan is to fire about 2,000 a day, which is a whole different scale.
For months on end, if they can.
Well, their plan, like everybody else, they're planning based on their last experience, which was 5 weeks.
In 2006, by the way, real quick, Elliot, Israelis were in bomb shelters. People had to evacuate in places like Kiryat Shimona. Israeli civilians were killed in those rocket barrages from Hezbollah.
Not large numbers, because for the most part people followed instructions. Let's put it this way, 2 million people's lives were utterly disrupted for that 5-week period.
In a tiny country like Israel, that's a big deal.
There's an interesting paradox here. When terrorists are blowing up buses, and this is not a comparison of good and bad or better or worse, just different. When people are blowing up buses, there's no correct behavior for yourself, okay? You don't get on the bus, so you're standing next to the bus, you're still in danger. When rockets are being fired, there is correct safety behavior of listening to sirens, getting under cover, going into shelters, and so on and so forth. So in a paradoxical way, the rockets disrupt many more people's lives simply by the fact that they can be protected against. They have a much greater impact, even if their ultimate lethal capability, or their lethal outcome, because the capability is there, is possibly less. The Hezbollah, the 06 war, was really just the round, and I won't even say the last round because we've had stuff going on with them since, that really goes back to the 1980s. And this is Iran's first real move into the Middle East. And I think a lot of people don't realize that Iran's problem in its imperial designs is that Iran is not an Arab country, it's Persia. That's right. The Arabs and Persians have traditionally been enemies. Right. And the Iranians played their Shiite Muslim identity card, if you will, to be able to interact with the Arab Shiites and get past the Persian-Arab, sort of call it the divide.
And focus on that Shiite brotherhood.
Up until Khomeini came to power in '79, the Shiite world was very decentralized in its religious authority. In other words, the community leader, the community imam, sheikh, whatever, was the leader. When Khomeini came to power, he changed that. And he argued that once there's an Islamic Shiite state, the supreme leader of the Shiite state is the supreme leader of the Shiites. Wow. Now, not everybody bought into that. However, the guys who were sent to run Hezbollah were Lebanese Shiite clerics who had studied under Khomeini personally. So if you will, they got their ordination, for lack of a better term, from Khomeini. Their Nasrallah, Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah,
the leader of Hezbollah today,
leader of Hezbollah, is beholden to the supreme leader Khamenei religiously, not just politically. So they're not just associated. They're not just a proxy. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of Iran.
Wow, so what you're saying, Elliot, is Hezbollah was started by Iran, funded by Iran. Hezbollah, trained, organized, everything. So Hezbollah here in southern Lebanon at Israel's doorstep is a virtual arm of the Iranian regime.
I wouldn't even say virtual. It's an arm of the regime. You can see Iranian flags on the border on the other side in Lebanon. This is the real Iranian deal. That has consequences. One of them is that increasingly, as Hezbollah has become a more effective military force, it's come under much greater control by Iran. Iran has invested much more into it, human, financial, etc. They're relying much more heavily on them. There are, I think, very reliable reports that the Hezbollah were involved in putting down the riots in Iran. To say nothing of their involvement in Syria and the civil war on behalf of Iran. In other words, here we're talking about agents. Yeah. Because of the heavy investment, Iran is not going to waste Hezbollah. Now they're investing, they're contributing, and I'll make a distinction, to Hamas. They're supplying Hamas, but it's not an investment. They'll waste Hamas.
Iran can, yeah.
And I always say the Iranians will fight to the last drop of Palestinian blood. No problem. Hezbollah, they will use, but not waste.
Yeah. Real quick, wanted to ask you, how many foot soldiers do we think Hezbollah has? We know about the rocket capabilities. Foot soldiers, tens of thousands. A lot of blood expended in Syria, by the way.
Some 60,000 in Lebanon. There are reserves that may be more than that, but let's say 60,000 is a round number. That's 5 infantry divisions. Wow. Okay. That's power.
This is a serious threat.
They don't have an armor capability. They don't have an air force capability. But in terms of a ground combat capability, especially for mountain, forest, village country, they're quite capable.
Thanks again to Elliott Chodoff for joining us and sharing his top-notch analysis. Elliott will be back with us on the Israel-Lebanon border next week for part 2 of our interview on the growing Hezbollah threat. You won't want to miss that. Well, up next, a Palestinian American shares what's really holding the Palestinian people back. Hint, it's not Israel. And later, Tim Tebow joins us in Jerusalem. Don't move.